Hi everyone, I'm going to show you today how to use the Compot above ground. There's a little bit of background noise, and a bit of air movement, so I hope that doesn't muck it up too much. Anyway, what you do is you get a nice pot because you don't want something in your garden that looks like a big ugly composter. So get a nice pot. This particular one doesn't have a hole in the bottom. It's a fiberglass one and you can drill as many holes as you want in the bottom of this pot. If you don't want to do it with holes in the bottom, you don't have to. That means you can do it on a balcony, but you have to be aware then you can't add the water to it like you can in the garden. So all you have to do is get your pot and put it inside this pot. Now ideally you want it sitting a little bit below the rim of the pot, so when you put the lid on you can cover it nicely with your leaves or whatever. But because I use this at the trade shows, I raise it up a little bit to show people. So I stick that in the bottom, put that on top. So get all your junk mail, all your old bills, scrunch it all up, pack it around the side. You don't need to shred it. You can if you want to, but you don't have to go and buy a shredder just for this exercise. So pack everything around the side. So ideally, get a pot that you can put your hands around the side to pack all your rubbish. And see, I've had this in here before, it's already scrunched up. So this pot to me is a little bit small. I would have preferred a bigger one like this, much easier to pack around the sides. But we're sticking with this one for now. Got a bit of leaves and dirt in amongst all of this. If you want, you can put a bit of a soil base on the bottom to sit your pot on, but it won't really matter in the end. Now there's an envelope. See with that bit of plastic in it? The worms will eat all the paper and leave that bit of plastic, and you can pick that out at the end when you're done. So pack around the outside as much as you can with all your old junk mail, all your old bills, any weeds from the garden, leaves, grass clippings, any biodegradable matter that you want to get rid of. Pack it around the outside of the pot. Keep the inside of the pot for your food waste. If you want to use cardboard around the outside, say like these are from a takeaway meal. So the paper you can just scrunch up and squash around the sides, but the cardboard, say like this, I personally recommend that you wet it first. So get a bit of water and wet it. Now the reason I say that is worms can't eat dry food. And even when you fill this with all your scraps and the water, like this, so when you're filling up the inside of your pot, you're going to collect all your waste on the kitchen sink like this, and you're going to add in all your wastewater. There's not actually much water in this one. I haven't collected much this time around, but normally this would be full of water. So when you tip that into your pot, all that water will wet the paper. The cardboard's a little bit thicker, so it takes a little bit more water to wet it. So wet the cardboard, and that way then you can put any amount of cardboard you want around the side. Tear it up a little bit just to make it easy to pack in. See how it bends up easy then because it's wet now? Now this is fairly thin cardboard, but you could use thicker cardboard. Again, you just want to wet it a bit longer, that's all. Now you don't have to put cardboard around it if you don't want to. You can just stick to paper, leaves, grass clippings, weeds, stuff from your garden. Don't put big twigs around there because they take too long to break down. And any fibrous weeds and things like that, they also take a long time to break down, but it doesn't matter around the side of the pot because you're saving the inside for your food waste. So I pack that as tight as I can get it, and the first time you do it, it's a little bit time consuming. After that it gets much easier because you've already done all the beginning of the hard work, and as it decreases you just keep topping it up. So at this point you would fill this with all your scraps. So you just take this and toss it all in. Now, I'm not going to do that because I take this to the trade shows, but that's what you would do in your garden or in your home. Then you just need to lock the lid on. Now what you can do with the lid, I should mention first, put some leaves or grass clippings around the top just to give it that cover. You don't necessarily have to, but I think it's a good idea because it'll keep the worms happy below. It'll keep them cool in summer and warm in winter. So here's a bit of bark and whatnot I've got here. It's a little bit messy, this. I'll fix it up properly later. There's some more paper. So then, if you've got a nice lid, and if you want this to be hidden in the garden, you can get a nice ornament, screw it onto the lid, and that way then, when you've done that and you've filled this up and you've covered your pot like this, you literally can't see it in the garden except this lovely pot and a little ornament on top. Now you can also be adventurous and screw a little pot plant on top, and you can use that as a handle as well. You do need to put 2 bolts in to stop it twisting around, and unlike me, you do need to water it to keep it alive. Otherwise it ends up like this. So that's all you do. Now what happens is, when you put that water and waste inside the pot, all that water wets all the paper. And the holes in the bottom, the worms will come up through those holes in the bottom and they will break down all this paper and cardboard and weeds and rubbish around the outside, and the soldier flies will get on the inside and do the hard work on the inside with your scraps. And both of them will keep dropping very, very fast, and the worms keep taking everything down into the soil. Now it's not going to nourish your garden the same way as putting a compot in the ground, because when you put it in the ground you're nourishing deep down at that 30 centimetre layer, whereas this is really only going to nourish that top 15 centimetre layer. But the beauty of doing it this way, you can move this around the garden wherever you want and how often you want. If it's too hot in one spot, put it somewhere else. And it's super, super fast because those worms keep coming up and taking everything back into the ground, and all you have to do is keep topping it up. Now if you looked at my other videos before this one, you will see that I did an end of summer experiment and an end of winter emptying, and you'll see the beautiful, beautiful soil that came out of those 2 experiments. So for some people you might have to empty it but once a year. For other people you might want to do it every 3 months, so you get to use all that soil around the outside. Slowly over time that soil will build up and it will get to a point where it won't keep emptying, but it will keep emptying underneath. So even if you're putting your scraps on the inside, it'll still keep going down into the soil. And I will show you a customer's garden in the next video of his pots, which he did this for a year, and we dismantle everything and show you how it looked after a year. The other thing you can do is, if you're finding that you still don't have enough room because you eat more waste than you thought you had, you can actually just get a nice pot like this, put it somewhere else in the garden with a couple of holes in the bottom, and if the contents inside your pot are almost decomposed, so you don't want them still looking like what they look like, you want them almost decomposed, but you still want more space to put more waste, scoop that waste out, put it into another pot. So scoop that waste out, put it into another pot. You might want to do a couple of pots at one time, and then make sure you cover it nicely with a bit of soil on top, some grass clippings, leaves, whatever you want to cover on top. Don't use sugarcane mulch because I find that attracts rats. That's different if you're spreading it all around your garden where it's fairly aerated, but in confined spaces like this and just above your pot in the garden, it seems to attract rats. It's the only time I've ever had a rat dig into my pots, and that's when I covered it with sugarcane mulch, and I could smell this sweet smell of molasses coming off the sugarcane. That's just my recommendation. If it works for you, then by all means do it. Otherwise, grass clippings, leaves, hay, straw. I love shredded bamboo. That stuff is fantastic, especially if you've got really bad clay soil or sandy soil, because the worms come up and they take the shredded bamboo deep down into the bottom, into the ground. Mind you, better if the pot's in the ground rather than this. It's a bit of a waste on top of this. And that's pretty much it. And all you have to do with this system is keep topping it up, keep packing your weeds and your rubbish and your paper around the outside, and it'll look after itself. And then once a year, twice a year, empty it out and start again. And you'll have a pot full of beautiful worms in the soil, and you couldn't ask for anything more. No hard work, no turning, nothing like that. Just top it up, top it up, top it up, and that's all you have to do. There we go. And if you've got a big pot like this, but you want your pot to come closer to the top, then put a brick in the bottom, and that way then, take this out, when you put your pot in there, this is a little bit low, let me see, it's not quite right. So I'll just use this one upside down. So when you put your pot in there, and you put the lid up that way, there's still quite a bit of space between there and there. So for me, I would want it sitting at about that level, just to give me enough space to cover it nicely so you can't see it. And if you've got the lid up this way, then all you'll see is a beautiful pot plant in the garden with a lovely plant growing out of it. No ugly composter, and it's doing all the hard work for you, and you don't have to do anything but top it up. And that's about it. Thanks for watching.